Welcome in to yet another episode of Building the Pride. I am your host, Drew, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Fantastic. Drew, how about yourself?
I'm doing really well. Things are going pretty
You're
well.
confused because I didn't say as handsome as ever, and you're like,
No,
I don't know how to respond.
I thought that if I didn't say anything, there was a chance you would repeat it next week. So
gotcha. Yeah. You just look confused, like what do I do here?
No,
boy.
It was a great joke the first time, but that was 50 episodes ago. So, yeah. It's the doldrums of the NFL season, even though it's a 24/7, 365 season now. Not much goes on between the start of the rookie minicamp and regular training camp. Yeah.
Yeah. We had OTAs and that kind of stuff, but not a ton now. A little bit of news and notes around the NFL. We now have the new highest paid wide receiver in the NFL.
Justin St. Brown.
Oh, Justin Jefferson, the actual best receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Just made, it was what, 140 million, 4 years, 140 million with 110 guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's some coin.
I don't think that's any surprise that Justin Jefferson has become the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. In fact, I saw some statistic from, I think it was Adam Schefter the other day, that now 5 of the 7 highest paid non-quarterbacks are all wide receivers, which is crazy to me.
It's AJ Brown is making 32 a year.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra is so Tyreek Hill is making 30 a year. Amon-Ra St. Brown is making 30 million plus $2,500. It's like so overtime. I want to make more than Tyreek. How about like $2,500 a year more?
I remember
why not? Let's do
when
it.
Trent Williams signed his new deal, he signed it for just like $100,000 more than David Bakhtiari had signed his most recent contract. And Bakhtiari got at him on Twitter and was like, dude, you petty as fuck.
Yeah, and this is only $2,500.
Yeah. So
out of a $30 million contract, I'll just, just give me like $2,500 more.
Yeah. So I mean, like, these guys know. They know.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a status thing. Even Cooper Kupp, I mean, he signed and his is only 26.7. He is now the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th highest paid. And we got guys like Debo. He just got signed. His free agency is 2026, so he's gonna be coming up soon. But really, the ones that I'm really curious about are going to be like T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk has got a really good point when he says, I need to be ahead of guys like St. Brown and A.J. Brown. His numbers almost match Justin Jefferson stat for stat, except he has more touchdowns. And I'm like, what do you do if you're San Francisco when you just also today paid CMC $19 million a year to be a running back extension?
So that's what you do when you have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk is you pay your running back, right? Like,
you can't pay all 3. Like, what are you gonna do with Ayuk?
Well, I mean, like, can't you? I mean, like, I'm really starting to think that you can pay everybody in the NFL. Like, you really can. I know that sounds ridiculous.
They're like $37 million over the cap next year before trying to sign Ayuk.
Sure. So obviously that's going to have to come down, right? So like when I'm looking at their cap next year, you've got Trent Williams making $34 million, Trent Williams making $34 million, no guaranteed money. Let's see, Debo's making 24, Travarius Ward's making 12, Bosa's making 20. Fred Warner is making 29. Ah, man. George Kittle's making 22. Hargrave's making 28. I mean, so like basically what you're doing is you're cutting one or two of those guys, or you're restructuring most of them.
Yeah.
To free up the cap room. But like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. So I've got the 2025 showing right now, and they're 37 million over the expected cap for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what are you gonna try to cut Trent Williams and save 14 million? Doubtful.
He is 35, I believe.
But he's still a top 3 tackle in the NFL.
I know.
And you've got Brock Purdy as quarterback. You need that mother protected. Like he needs that, right? So I guess maybe Malik Collins, like he's a $10 million. There's no dead money. Save 10 million.
Yeah, he's probably right at the top of the cut list, right?
Yeah, but that still only puts you 27 million under or over the cap. So third,
right? Or a fourth. But
yeah, I think it's gonna be tough.
I don't think it's gonna be tough. Every year we see teams like New Orleans and one or two other teams that are like, oh my God, like they're gonna have to gut their roster. And usually what ends up happening is that they end up cutting veterans off the back end of their rosters to free up a third of the money, and then you get restructures to get another third of it, and then outright cuts one or two guys or a trade or something like. But like so probably I imagine what would most likely happen is Ayuk will sign a deal that is backloaded, and his
like
cap
deeper
number,
into the contract.
Yes. So his cap number will actually decline in the short term, a lot like Goff's did this year. But like restructures are the bread and butter of teams that want to save on cap space like this, and they'll just push it down the road. So, I mean, we see Detroit doing that a lot now. That's a weird thing that happened.
Yeah, that was super weird. So speaking of like what Goff did with his contract, this is actually something that A6 and I got into a little bit of debate on. Like, I'm not a big fan of how this contract is set because 24% of the cap is a huge number. There are very few people in the NFL that have that big of a cap hit.
Well, that's
right?
the restructure
as a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you basically have to, right? So if they're not restructuring it, we're just going to be screwed. And so we started talking about, well, that's what all the big quarterbacks do. So I'm like, okay, well, let's see if that pans out. So let's take a look at the most expensive quarterback, Joe Burrow. The highest point that he ever is 17.8. That's a huge difference than 24, right? Mm-hmm. Look at Justin Herbert. He's the third highest. His highest point is only 18.6. Like, I think this is where we have to restructure it, but you do have to like figure out a way to make the average, your not your average cap hit, because you could have like the Goff thing where you're like, oh, you got this really big one year, and then we don't want to be screwed that year. But you need to kind of have all of those at a consistent level. To me, granted, they've got a capologist, and that's literally his job, right, to figure out all this shit. And I'm sure they went to him and said, all right, this is what we're going to do. But like in 2 years, we're going to restructure this so we can get this number down and we can keep rolling, right, Jared? He's going to be like, peace. You gave me that no trade clause. In 2 years, let's talk about how we want to move this shit around, right? That's probably what's going to happen. But I would much rather have seen a structure like this, 14, 16, 18%, or like Joe Burrow's where it was around that 17-ish% for like the primary years. But and if we look at on the wide receivers, you were talking about like St. Brown. I thought we did a really good job of like figuring out where that cap is. Pretty consistent. Like this year could have been a big year, but we kind of backloaded it like you were talking about. So I think they're going to try to do the same thing for their players as well and keep that first year low for next year. They have to.
Yeah, it's not. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we see some like real big restructures in the next 2 or 3 years, just to kind of keep the cap going. Now, the other thing is, if the cap keeps climbing by 10 or $15 million every year, just like the average that it's been raising, I mean, then 2 years from now, if you've got another $30 million to play with, yes, you're signing other people, to longer term contracts. Aiden, they've got a bunch of guys this year that they're going to be eligible for a long-term extension, but I think that the cap and the economics, the caponomics, have largely been
think you
figured
invented
out.
that, Drew.
Yeah, I'm a genius. Hashtag trendsetter. So I don't know that. I mean, like for you and I looking at stuff, like obviously we don't have it figured out, but like I think that the people whose job it is to figure this stuff out know the tricks to make sure that it works, right? And it's just kind of like, what philosophy of the tricks does your team employ, right? So New Orleans is different than Philly, who is different than Houston, who is different than Detroit, whatever. But like the long and short of it is, by the day before the start of the new league year, you got to be under, and outside of that, you can spend whatever you want. So, as long as you get under, so like that $37 million that San Francisco's over, starting in 2025.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've got a plan in place to fix it. Otherwise, you don't give Christian McCaffrey 19 a year.
right.
When Ayuk's on board and Justin Jefferson just signed a $35 million contract. So I'm curious what CeeDee Lamb gets, because I'll bet he gets something close to Justin Jefferson.
CeeDee Lamb's the other guy that you wonder what they're going to do now.
Dallas came out this week and said that they are committed to re-signing Dak. And I'm convinced that he's going to be the first $60 million quarterback. So, because he has them over an absolute barrel. And when the team comes out and like, oh yeah, we're totally committed to doing it, I would tell my agent, like, go get me everything. No trade, highest AAV, longest deal, whatever. I want all.
I mean, what are their options?
Nothing. They have no options. That's the problem. So they're too good.
They've got no options, and he was playing at an MVP caliber until like the last 2 games of the season last year. So it's not like he was like, yeah, did they flounder in the playoffs? Yes. Is it all on one player? No.
He's gonna get the blame for it.
He will, because that's what the quarterbacks do. They get the praise when it's a team victory and the blame when it's a team loss.
Right.
How's it going, Pat? It's going well tonight. How about you, buddy?
This says that his cap number in 2024 is $55 million.
Who's that?
Dak Prescott.
Really?
Correct. Well, I think OTC represents everybody on their average as opposed to what their actual hit is that year. So I think looks like Dak counts 55 against the cap. So he's, 20%? He is 21.2% this year against their cap. So
yeah,
you were looking at Jared 2 years out, right?
Yeah. And that was 24.5%. So Jared was even more a piece of their cap, of our cap.
You gotta, with all this like cap this and cap that, this team and that team, you really gotta look at, Patrick Mahomes' contract is literally a work of beauty,
It really is.
So he counts against the cap this year, 37 million. Next year, he's 66 and 25.5% of their cap before anything else. And the next year, he's 68 and 24% of the projected cap.
Yeah.
So,
which is more or less what Goff is. The difference, he's the best player on the planet.
Yeah. it's real helpful when you're the best player on the planet. I mean, but like
Pat asks, the CB that we cut for spousal abuse, did he go against the cap?
so
That's still a TBD, right?
so Cam Sutton is the player in question. Over the Cap lists his cap value as being refunded to the Lions. That's why they're at 40 million. I believe currently OTC has Detroit as the third most cap space in the NFL.
Yep.
Which is
40.3 million behind the Commanders and the
considering
Patriots.
the money that we handed out is fucking shocking, right? Okay.
Well, the money was not for this year; it was for future years, right? It was extensions.
That is correct. So
next year we drop to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th, and then in 2026 we drop to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from the bottom. So we are 23rd in 2026.
Well, I mean, those numbers are not going to hold, right? So
we are $120 million less cap space than the Broncos. They're going to have 187 million in 2026, and we currently will have 69.8.
Interesting.
But the Browns are $10 million over the cap in 2026.
Well, that's once again.
Thank you, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's Deshaun. They restructure his deal every year. So
Deshaun?
They are going to restructure his deal until he's off the team, and then they're just going to pay. That's going to be their rebuilding year. I would pay some more of our players. Why?
With the 40 million,
so why?
Get it done.
Why would you do that? Yeah, but that's this year's money. So
it's next year's money that we have to worry about for Hutch.
Right. So the thing about the 40 or whatever the number really is right now is that you can roll some or all of that money over to next season. Whatever, there's some percentage of what you don't pay that you can roll over. So if the Lions are giving Cam Sutton, if they had cut him, they get back, his money. If they really do have 40 million in cap space, well, that gives them a lot of flexibility. You can go into the season if some kind of if a player is disgruntled or T. Higgins is actually not going, he signs his franchise tender but doesn't play, or whatever, and just sits out, and it's oh, okay, it's like week 4 and T. Higgins hasn't played and the Bengal, and he's I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. I want a new contract.
I told you so.
And it's okay, what team could give T. Higgins a long-term contract and absorb his guaranteed money that he's going to make this year or whatever on the tracker? It's the Patriots, Commanders, and Lions, all of whom would love to have T. Higgins. So he's going to have choices. So you save the relief or something like that. You save it for in case of injury. You can go out and sign a replacement player. You save it for elevating players from the practice squad to the main roster. There's numerous reasons why you would want to keep cap space. Maybe not this much cap space, but that's fine. But whatever.
You can also restructure too, right? So if you get towards the end of that season, you're going to be hey, we have $30 million left. Let's front load some of this stuff. Let's move some of that money to this year. We will cut you a check, and then it'll reduce the amount in future years, right?
I don't think it works that way. I don't think that it works that you can take money and pay it up front now and save later. I think it works the other way around. You can restructure and save up front, but you pay it out later. So no one wants to pay out money now when you can pay it in the future. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So you keep as many dollars.
So where are the Niners on this list? They've got $25 million. You don't think that they might want to pay on somebody's cap hit for next year this year
You
so they can
can't.
afford to pay Ayuk?
You can't.
You don't think they could restructure it that way?
That's not a restructure. That's the opposite of a restructure. So
A restructure is changing, right? It's changing the structure of the contract.
a restructure is you take a portion of their guaranteed money and it's one of the bonuses.
Signing bonus?
Prorated signing bonus, their base salary and their signing bonus, and you can cut them a check for the ability to restructure, but you only gain money in the year that you do the restructure. You don't gain it in a future year. If you want to save money in a future year, you have to have cap space in the current year and then roll that over at the end of the season. So otherwise, you would see there would be teams that are like, I'm going to pay. So there's a salary cap, but there's also a salary floor, which means that you can't have a team and pay $95 million to put a team on the field because you're some stingy ass owner or whatever, right? So like the Florida Marlins in baseball forever were exactly that. Like we are going to draft players, develop them. We're never going to spend over this amount. And when we hit on players and they become big, this is how Miguel Cabrera ended up in Detroit. We are going to trade them for a bunch of assets that allow us to keep this process going. If that system took place, of course, MLB doesn't have a salary cap, but like if that system was present in the NFL, there would be at least one team that was like, we are going to moneyball this and not get anywhere near the salary cap. And we are going to field our quote unquote best team for the least amount of money and like pay forward on contracts and the kind of things that you're saying. And it simply doesn't exist. So like that leads me to believe it's not present in the rules that you are allowed to do that.
That could be.
Because otherwise, if you've got $40 million and it's the day before the new league year, why wouldn't you cut a check to drop next year's cap number by $30 million or whatever? It's just that you don't pay ahead on it. You just roll it over to give yourself more flexibility. So like,
gotcha.
Yeah. So that's what they're able to do. I fully expect that they will roll over as much cap space as they can and try and continue to do that, because not only does the cap go up by its normal amount, but if you roll over money, it goes up more. And now you're effectively spending $295 million in a single season. And then you can try and perpetuate that process, but they're catching up because they have to give out so many enormous contracts because they've drafted so well over the last 3 or 4 years.
Right on. One of the things that we thought about doing today was just kind of mailbag type questions. So anybody in the chat, Pat, throw out questions and we will kind of just answer randomly. I grabbed some from other like mailbag articles across the interwebs. So we'll throw some of these out for Drewster, and I'll throw my thoughts on there as well. But we'll start with you. What do you think the weakest position group is on our team?
It's a good question. Well, I guess the fact that it doesn't immediately jump to mind is a great sign, right? I guess I'll take the cheap way out here and buy myself some time to keep considering it, and I'll say kicker. I hate our kicker situation. I hate it. 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 I don't like it at all. I hate it. And I would love to see them, once the the UFL season wraps, to get this Bates guy into camp and at least have a kicking competition. They brought in a UDFA to compete with Badgley, but that's less than they did last year when they traded for Patterson, right? Yep. So it doesn't appear as though they are going to address it right away or what have you.
Field goals. Who needs field goals?
A couple of times last year would have been real nice. But I think that there's an argument to be made for defensive tackle. And I think that there is an argument. Thanks, Pat. I think there is an argument that you can be made for guard. So let me.
So you haven't hit on the one that comes to mind for me. None of you guys have hit on yet, so that's interesting.
So the way that I'll go with guard is Graham Glasgow is I think, slightly above average guard. I think he's a serviceable, get your job done. Oh, I'm going to play between two probably Hall of Famers guard, right? And then Kevin Zeitler, who they have signed, is 34, which is my only real concern about him. And what if this is the year that he just falls off physically? We're going to get to Mike. Mike will not have his voice silenced. So, but beyond them, depth-wise, you have Christian Mahogany, who's a rookie, although he appears like, from everything I've heard, it's just like, this is exactly the kind of guy we want on the roster. And you've got guys like Colby Sorsdale and Kyoto Awasika, who I think are just gigantic question marks. You know, so I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to let you say it, and then I'll tell the truth. So I'll say guard.
You're going to say guard. All right. I didn't think about kicker, and I think that's probably maybe if there's a right answer, it's probably that. I think wide receiver is our weakest position group. We have an elite receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then we have a whole bunch of question marks, a whole bunch of average at best as far as historically being, shown. Do I think Jameson Williams has a ton of potential? Absolutely. Could he just come out of nowhere and be the guy that we drafted at 15 overall? And that all of a sudden doesn't make this the weakest position group on the team. But if he plays, if he struggles catching balls, if he struggles getting on the same page with the quarterback for the third year in a row, and he's not our second best player, and Khalif Raymond is our second best player, or Antoine Green, I think that the wide receiver position is so important in today's game that it has to be really good. I think it's the weakest wide receiver core probably in our division, and probably bottom 3 in our conference. The good news is we have a guy like Sam Laporta who is taking some of that load off of the receivers, right? So he's a pass catcher. Right? He's on the tight end group, but he doesn't improve the wide receiver position group. But I think between Laporta, St. Brown, and then a bunch of average guys, obviously it worked well for us last year, and I think it can work again. But if I was going to work to improve one position group by going out and snagging a best available free agent, I would go for the wide receiver, or try to trade for a guy like T. Higgins and say, hey, come to us. If you don't want to play there, we've got money for you. We've got an elite team around you. We were a helmet doink away from going to the Super Bowl last year. Come join the team. So I'm going with the wide receiver group.
Yeah, I do think there's issues there that can be addressed. I don't consider Sam Laporta to be a tight end. He is so much of a pass catcher that I wonder, because Josh Reynolds is now in Denver, I don't know that there are enough targets for the other pass catchers on the team. So, here's what I would do. I would run some version of 21 personnel where you have 2 running backs and one tight end. And I would just have both Montgomery and Gibbs line up in the backfield and then flex out Gibbs to whatever side of the line gives him the best matchup. And then I would just play him as a slot wide receiver. It's not like he can't do that.
Pat says, do you guys ever think the NFL will ever make the roster size bigger, like 58, so then you can actually dress 53 players on Sunday? Football is a brutal sport, lots of injuries.
So the only issue I see with that is that I think that if you do that, it pushes up the cost of the roster on a year-to-year basis. And like, I don't think the owners will want to pay more people to be guaranteed roster spots. I think that if they could cut positions on the roster, they would do it. But like, and like the other thing is like, if I mean, that's why practice squads exist, you know, is that it's a reserve of players that you can legally have the rights to and that play for your team, right? But they don't count against your 53-man roster. So the way that I look at it is like, this is effectively the practice squad, you know? And so is it a perfect analogy? No. But like, I don't think they're going to increase roster sizes, because that's what, let's just say every player you add is $2 million. Like, that's $10 million a year for every owner in the NFL. And even though they're billionaires, like, they didn't get rich because they gave away a lot of money, you know? And like, if player safety really mattered to owners, I think the game would look a lot different than it does today.
That's cute.
So I don't see them paying out more money to make players safer so that you can have greater flexibility. Who did you hear talking about it?
Oh, interesting. I heard people talking about it. I think what they're going to do to try to help is they're going to go to an 18th game, and they're going to go with two bye weeks, and that will help with the whole injury situation. That's my gut.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't have another. So if you just added a bye week to what we have right now, who cares? Like, you can't figure that shit out on a schedule. Like, you make the whole season go another week. That's a whole nother weekend of however many games that you can advertise on. You know, like, if you want to do something like, oh, it's the end of the season, or like, we're going to push it out to an 18th week or something, like, you can. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Like, you already format games, so it's like score, commercial, extra point, score, kickoff, commercial. Yeah. Like, you don't want to do that one whole different additional week. Oh, Jeff Risdon, sure.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why they may not be doing it is they want the season to end around the first Sunday of February every year. And if we add another week, now it's the second Sunday, or, that kind of thing. But the interesting thing for me is there's nothing else going on in February. So why does it have to be like the first weekend in February? Why can't it be the second weekend in February for the Super Bowl? Well, or the third weekend, right? Like, maybe go 18 and 2, right? So you have 2 extra weeks. There's nothing going on. You're not competing with anything else sports-wise. Period, end of sentence, because you're already the big dog, right? So you already dominate that. Baseball hasn't started, right? Because that's going to start in the spring. So hockey, that's right around the middle of the season. Hockey All-Star game is in that February-ish time frame. So I'd be willing to bet if Goodell picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Gary Bettman, any chance your guys are willing to move that All-Star game 1 week later so it doesn't conflict with the Super Bowl we're going to have?" Gary's going to be like, "Oh, which day were you going to have that? Because I want to make sure that our All-Star game is the only thing going on. I'm not competing with the Super Bowl. Thank you for letting me know that this is the new schedule," right? So I don't know why they wouldn't do that. It makes too much sense to add another bye week in there, extend it a little bit more, get more money from media and television rights and all that stuff. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet.
I mean, if I was the NFL, one of the first changes I think I would make is, like, if you add an 18th week, okay, or like even a second bye week into a 17 game season, like, I would make all of the All-Star stuff take place after the season. Every year there's like half of the roster can't go because they're still in the playoffs. So, like, ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't want to take away from their summer breaks.
Well, the NFLPA might change that for them. the NFLPA has come out and put together some kind of proposal that would like change the way the offseason is going to go. And like the funny thing is that from people who have read it, like the feedback I've read is that I can't believe players would want to do this. Like it effectively negates like a whole month off that veterans have, you know?
Yeah.
And like they said that like that's the time when football players take their kids on vacation and like spend time with the family, and like why even have an off season if you're just gonna gut it, you know? And like I don't know what the NFLPA's reason for proposing it is, but like if the players aren't on board, then like you can't, I don't know what you think you're doing as a union, you know? So I don't know. We'll see. There's going to be changes. But what's next, Mike?
All right. So the next one I've got is, what do you think the most? Pat might be alluding to it with some of the questions about the OTAs and stuff like that going on. What do you think the most competitive position battle is going to be during camp this year?
Like competitive, like one guy is going to start over another one.
Yep. Where there's those kinds of like positions are up for grabs.
I think it comes down to two positions, and I think that's wide receiver 3, and I think it's who's going to start opposite Aiden Hutchinson. So I'll start on defense. So you sign Marcus Davenport. We penciled him in as the starter across from Aiden on paper, right? But they also have Josh Paschal, and they signed Matthew Betts, who I think could be sneaky good for this team. I really, if there's one thing that I would want, cornerback, WT. What do you think WT is? Weak.
I don't know, but I think cornerback is going to be the tightest one as well.
Where?
Just figuring out who's going to be cornerback 2. Where's Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph and Ife Melifonwu? Like where's all that going to land? I think that's going to be the biggest question mark. Is how's it going to shake out? Is Rakestraw going to earn a spot on the other? I think Terrion Arnold is going to be out there for sure. But where does everybody else fall? I think, and where are you at in the pecking order? Who's the backup nickelback? Who's the starter? That kind of stuff.
I think Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, and Carlton Davis are all going to be on the field, and it would take an injury to one of those players to have them not be a starter in the defensive backfield. So the only question to me is, does Ennis Rakestraw play better in the slot than Ife Melifonwu plays at strong safety? Because if Ennis Rakestraw plays better in the slot, I would just move Brian Branch to strong safety and play him alongside Kirby, and then I put Rakestraw in the slot, and then if you think that you want to go with, because Melifonwu's like, if a defense plays 70 snaps, Melifonwu's going to play 50 snaps to start.
In which position?
Safety in one package or another.
So instead of Kirby?
No, not instead of Kirby.
Okay.
But like you will move those guys on and off the field depending on personnel alignments, down and distance, the type of defense that you want to call. Like it's not going to be Melifonwu plays 70 snaps or Rakestraw plays 70 snaps.
Right.
They're going to get some share of the available snap totals every game. Yeah. So like both of them are going to play. I just don't know which one's going to start, but I don't even know that matters because they're both going to play.
In that like 40, 30, 35, 35, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like if you want to run...
maybe somebody's just way better. Maybe it's 50-20.
Sure. You know, but like if you need to play man defense and you're playing the Vikings and TJ Hawkinson is in there, you might want to put Branch on Hawkinson and then put, Mel Fonwu at strong safety and Rakestraws on the sideline. Or if you're playing a speedier dude, like, I don't know, let's say Keenan Allen or whatever, you might want someone a little bit more fleet of foot than Mel Fonwu to line up on Keenan Allen. And so then Keenan Allen can cook Rakestraw as opposed to Melifonwu, because he's gonna fucking cook him because the dude's amazing. Should the Lions sign Justin Simmons, or is that too redundant? It's too redundant. And so here's the other way to think about this, I think, Zaquo, which is a good question. But like the question is, like, should the Lions go out and add a guy like Justin Simmons or Quentin? What's the guy's name who went to Seattle?
Quandre Diggs.
No, Quandre Diggs. Yeah, that's right. Nailed it. Good job, Mike.
Boom, got there.
You nailed it. Or somebody.
I'm not just good looking. I also have terrible memory. That
you only get to make the joke once a day, once a podcast. That's all you get to make the joke.
Crap. Well.
But here's the other thing. Like every game, every week that goes on, a player like Justin Simmons gets cheaper. And like I don't know that you sign a guy like that and bring him into this team when quote unquote everybody else knows they're okay. I've been wanting to sign Calais Campbell for 2 years. So like absolutely you should sign Calais Campbell. Like they're not going to unless there's some kind of injury or something, I don't think. But like I think their Calais Campbell signing this year was DJ Reader. So
yeah, I think so as well.
Which I'm happy about because I like DJ Reader, but like I love Calais Campbell, and like I just didn't understand why they didn't bring him in, and he went to Atlanta last year. He's a great player, but like all these guys, unless you're going to sign Justin Simmons like a 3-year deal, and you're just like, okay, it's you and Kirby, like let's just be real about this, like. Unless you want to play Brian Branch at safety, Kirby Joseph is the best safety on the roster, and it's not close.
Yeah.
So, like,
I think he was ranked the 6th best safety in the NFL on a recent, I don't know if it was like an ESPN thing or if a PFF. I just remember seeing Kirby was at number 6.
So, like, and Kirby is very much the quintessential center fielder. So he wants to be 25 yards off the ball, watching the quarterback's eyes, drifting sideline to sideline. Like he is not the dude that wants to come up and just lay a hit on somebody, right? So unless Justin Simmons wants to be that guy, and like that's not where Justin Simmons made his money. Justin Simmons made his money doing what Kirby Joseph does. Then I don't see a signing like that happening. Plus, if they felt like Justin Simmons was quote unquote their guy, I mean, they've had 4 months to sign him. So,
that being said, do you think anybody's going to get signed yet between now and the preseason?
I think we'll get into training camp and preseason, and people will start getting hurt, and you'll start seeing guys like Calais Campbell, Justin Simmons, other people that you were like, oh, he should be on a roster. Like they're going to start getting signed as depth pieces or potential starters, but but teams are going to give the guys they already signed in free agency or their rookies or whomever, they are going to give those guys an opportunity to play. And then as attrition happens, which it absolutely will in the NFL, these guys will find homes, on rosters. And then you might see Lions sign Justin Simmons or Calais Campbell or, pick your poison. But like, I don't think that they should do so today. But it's a good thought, Zaquo. And like, if this was Madden, I would be like, yup. Wouldn't mind a trailer. You know what? I thought about that. Like if they went out and they signed Calvin Ridley, they drafted a kid. No, they signed Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati. So he's their 3. Calvin's your number 2, right? And then you got Hopkins for at least 1 more year as your 1. Like this kid would remember the Titans training staff and the coaching staff is not the group that drafted Treylon Burks. So, I mean, like,
Right.
if you're looking for an X that you're like, okay, this is the kind of kid that, like, I don't think the Lions would trade for, but, like, I absolutely would, is like, oh, okay, like, this guy at Arkansas was just all athleticism. That's it. Let's bring him in and chisel that marble and find out what kind of player he is. But, like,
Yeah.
you bring him in, maybe he's your X, and maybe you get him cheap, So, I mean, I would absolutely take a chance on a guy like that. Young, maybe he's in the wrong situation. Let's get him to an established culture that is going to make sure he shows up to work every day or whatever. And, like, that's the thing, is like, the Lions very much want guys that are going to be in the weight room because they can't not be in the weight room, right? They just have to be. And,
Football is
like,
their life, right?
right. And like Jack Campbell, Pat said it earlier, like Jack Campbell seems to be that guy this year. Like, he's just lived at the facility and is like, turned the corner, from everybody that's saying anything. And like Broderick Martin has been that way, and that kind of stuff. But like, when it comes to guys like Jalen Carter or Traylon Burks, or it's like all the talent, all the athleticism is there, but you just need to add this other thing to it. Like, if the culture can't do that for somebody, I think that the culture is
A little bit
imperfect.
weaker than it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I'll use an example that I'm aware of. So I paid attention to the Ravens for several years, and the Ravens signed Earl Thomas, who made his bones with the Seattle Seahawks in their Legion of Boom defense. And they signed him to like a big deal, multi-year deal, like 30-40 million bucks. And this was a couple years ago. And he came onto the team and he was with them for a while, and it just wasn't a fit. Like, he just wasn't fitting into their culture. And the players talked to the team captain, and the team captain went to the general manager at the time and said, this guy's just not a fit. He doesn't fit in here. He's not the right kind of example. We don't want him on the team. And they cut him with like a ton of money left on his deal, So like, like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, it's not like you're giving up a first round pick for Burks, So like,
All right, I got another question for you.
Yeah.
And for the chat. All right. So this is kind of a two-parter, or a two-version one. Who do you think will be the most improved player, and do you think needs to be the most improved player? Like, which one of those do we think is going to be that guy, and which one, like, boy, we really need this person to have a big step up in order to be successful? And it may be the same player, but it may also not.
Well, this is real easy to me. So I think the most improved player will be Jack Campbell, and I think the player that needs to be the most improved player is Jameson Williams. So Jack Campbell.
Does JMO need it for his own career, or for the Lions to take another step?
For his own career. So, like, Josh Reynolds is gone. So there are 70 targets that are up for grabs between, in my opinion, Jameson Williams is the number one, Jahmyr Gibbs, and whoever distinguishes himself as wide receiver 3, which I'm betting is going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. But I don't know that Donovan Peoples-Jones has 40 catches this year. So like, if you gave, JMO had 55 catches or 55 targets last year. So if he gets that plus 25 or 30 more, you're entering into, like, you're a huge part of the offense kind of player. And there's still enough for like DPJ and Jahmyr Gibbs to kind of have their way too. But like, the problem that I have with Jameson Williams has nothing to do with Jameson Williams. It has everything to do with Jared Goff, because I don't think that Goff can get him the ball where he is going to be the most effective. And like, you can't have Laporta and St. Brown and Gibbs and Jamison Williams all be underneath all the time.
Right.
So like, okay, you know, if you need a guy to run a 9 route, Jamison Williams is like one of the fastest players in the NFL. But if you need a dude to run a 9 route, Khalif Raymond can do that. And he's not bad at it.
Right.
I just realized I haven't turned the light on in my den.
Like, wow, it's getting a little dark in here.
Why is it so dark in my background? Anyway. But like, you have a guy that, and like, Khalif Raymond is not slow. Like, Khalif Raymond ran past a couple people last year, you know, out of the slot or whatever. My problem is that Jared Goff just has not shown that unless there's a blown coverage or something, that he has the arm to get the ball to Jamison Williams streaking down the field.
Right.
He just doesn't. And so, okay, so the offense is designed around doing what he's good at, which is throwing the ball 15 to 25 yards down the field. Okay, so like, if you can get Williams on slants or in routes or posts somewhere in the 15 to 25, 30 yard.
I'd prefer
range.
in routes over posts.
Well, I mean, that's
because the
fine.
ball just has to go farther with zip. Otherwise, it's going to be picked, and I would rather see. I think that's a more dangerous route. But yes, to your point, at least it's not 40 yards downfield.
Right. And so,
in fact, actually, we're better off with the 40 yards downfield than the post, because those don't tend to need the zip. Those just need the accuracy and the ability for somebody to hop up and make those contested catches. Whereas those post routes either need to be zipped over there with some arm strength, or they need to have made just like quite a bit of separation where undercutting that pass is not a thing, right? So,
and like,
which is why we don't throw those very often.
Right. Here's the other thing. And this is mainly why I was like, don't draft an X wide receiver. Like, it doesn't matter. And like, I don't know that JMO can break out on this team, is that the trust level and go-to factor between St. Brown and Laporta for Goff is so unbelievably high that, like, if he is looking for anybody but those two guys on any given play, my thought would be, oh, it's Laporta gone, St. Brown gone, Gibbs. Oh, St. Brown gone, Laporta gone, Gibbs. You know, like, when do you get an opportunity where Jamison Williams is going to be your first or second look? What does that look like?
Flea flicker. Those are the time where it's the first look.
They got to stop doing that shit. But like, my issue with Jamison Williams is, I think he's a fantastic player completely on the wrong team.
Yeah. I think we should trade him to Kansas City, and I'm not sure what for, but maybe Chris Jones. Obviously, with more, not straight up. There's going to need to be more, but like
Chris Jones isn't coming back in that deal.
Yeah, those were the two guys that I had. I think if Jack Campbell doesn't make the biggest leap, then I think it's going to be a real bummer for our team. Because he was not good last year, and he got a lot of snaps. And I don't see those snap numbers going down. So what I want to see is quality and production going up. And he did better at the end of the season. Awesome. Sounds like he's doing better in OTAs and some of these early workouts. Awesome. Let's make sure that just keeps going, and we get a little bit better coverage from him, a little bit better on the tackling, like all those things that he was just not good at for like 14 of our 17 games. Let's just keep jumping on and doing better on that. That's the thing I think that is going to be a big piece for what we need to do.
So to me, the thing that gets Jack Campbell the jump is if he plays fucking Mike linebacker, which he doesn't. So the person who plays Mike is Alex Anzalone, even though he's a will linebacker. they're both playing out of position. And the reason they're playing out of position is that Anzalone understands the defense and can call the plays. And so until Jack Campbell can do that and then force Anzalone to the will linebacker spot, which is where he should be, and then lets Jack Campbell play the Mike, which is where he should be, then to me, you don't see the jump. But like Campbell, get your body right. That's great. The thing that I care more about for Jack Campbell is I need you to speak the language of this defense as if you were born to it. Like, go hang out with Aaron Glenn to the point where he's like, okay, dude, I need to have Easter with my family. Get the fuck out. Like, like bother him incessantly until you can read that dude's thoughts. Because until you can do that, you're not pushing Anzalone out of that position. And they can play him at will or whatever. He's not as good at it. And that's what we saw last year. So at Iowa, he was a Mike. So if he can take over that particular role, then you can have our linebacking core, quote unquote, and to me, makes sense. So you can have Anzalone backed up by Rodrigo. You can have Barnes back up Campbell. And then you can still figure out who the fuck your Sam linebacker is going to be, whether it's Betts or James Houston or whoever it's going to be, this combination linebacker edge rusher. But I think that they're trying to figure it out. But the whole thing to me hinges on, can Jack Campbell get the green dot from Alex Anzalone? If he can, I think the defense can get to a place where it's like, okay, we're 10th in the league. And if they have the 10th overall defense and a top 5 offense, then yeah, okay, a Super Bowl is a legitimate thing that you could be rooting for. But I don't know how can the offense be any better? I have my doubts. But where the team can make the most improvement immediately is we have to play better defense overall. And if they can, to me, the thing that's going to make the defense better this year is if Rakestraw and Arnold work out and the secondary isn't just an abysmal, then Hutch is going to get home on some of these rushes.
Right.
And that's some number of forced fumbles. That's more sacks. Sacks are absolute drive killers. It's loss of down, loss of yards. So if they can get to that where Hutch is I can touch him with my hand, but I can't grab him and throw him to the ground. If that's the difference, I think the whole season is the defense is just a different thing that other teams have not yet played against when it comes to the Detroit Lions. So,
all right, I've got another one that's kind of a two-parter.
Last one. Yep.
I want to do one more after this.
All right, you said an hour, but
I know I want to keep it close to an hour, but I think there's 2 good questions left. So I'm going to throw it in chat too, because I want the chat to ask the question to themselves or answer the question. Which rookie is going to make the biggest impact, and which will be the biggest surprise?
Well, I think the answer to the first part, it has to be Terrion Arnold. It has to be. If it's not Terrion Arnold, great. You drafted another dude later that has a bigger impact. But I had Terrion Arnold going at 9 to the Falcons or something, or not the 8.
I think I had him around 12 or 13.
Yeah,
but so he certainly wasn't in the 20s,
right? So if you got a dude that's a top 10 player at corner at 24 or wherever they ended up taking him, then that guy needs to have an instant impact. And I'm not talking Ahmad Gardner impact. I'm talking all right, you're not just someone that people are going to run past, Jerry Jacobs, or whatever.
I'm not naming names, Will Harris.
Seatbelt gang. But if he's out there and competent and getting better as the year goes on, as he starts to play against these guys or whatever, please. Oh, by the way, Arnold, please sign your contract. So
he hasn't signed it yet?
No, he's one of the last first rounders to not sign his deal.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is ridiculous because the only thing that you can argue about is when you get your money, and that kind of stuff is
Yeah, and when you're drafted 24th,
Yeah, just
you just
give
don't
it
get a
to him.
ton of sweat, right?
Just give it to him. I don't care. Who cares? So like, he's the guy that I hope makes the biggest impact. Which will be the biggest? Well,
The biggest surprise.
I don't think Giovanni Manu is going to play. I don't think Vaki's going to play outside of special teams. Mahogany, someone would have to get hurt for Mahogany to play. And Wingo, I think, is third on the depth chart at defensive tackle. So
Rakestraw is the only guy left on your list. So it's Rakestraw by default.
I think it has to be the top two guys, unfortunately. And like, this is weird for us because we are used to like, oh, these fourth rounders worked out. Oh, this sixth rounder showed a lot of promise. Oh, this, oh, that. And plus the number 2 overall pick's not half bad. But like, I think now, like, there aren't enough spots on the rosters to fit all the rookies in.
Right.
And so the spots that are open mostly go to your early round picks. And you need to hit on those guys. And like the Lions have been pretty good about that over the last couple of years. So to me, I guess it's Arnold and Rakestraw. Like if those guys hit, hooray! Like we're probably going back to the NFC title game. Hooray!
Right.
But if it's Vaki, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I want a top 10 special teams unit, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I think Vaki was my pick for the biggest surprise because I think he's going to end up getting more reps at running back than we would have expected.
All right.
Right? I mean, I think
probably, yeah.
Running back gets beaten up, quite a bit. So at some point, I think that one, hopefully not both, of our running backs are going to be down for a game or two, and I think he's going to come in and we're going to be like, wow, this guy is impressive, running the ball. So I think, and because I just felt weird saying like Arnold is going to be the best, and then the second guy that we picked is going to be the biggest surprise by default. I felt like, all right, outside of that scenario, I think Vaki might be that big surprise. So, but we only have 6 picks this year, and 3 of which are not expected to really see the field outside of injuries. So it does kind of limit the quantity of people we get to choose for that, right?
And that's only going to be exacerbated as this roster continues to get built out because there's just going to be less opportunities for everybody.
All right, and then the last one that I've got, and I'm really curious about this one because I think there's about 4 different players this could be. Let's see here. Outside of Jared Goff, what player's season-ending injury would negatively impact the Lions the most?
So the 2 guys that jump to mind would be Hutch and St. Brown. And I'm going to have to go with Hutch here because if St. Brown goes down, I think that you can force feed Laporta to the part where he's almost as productive as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like he was only 20 targets behind St. Brown last season, and like St. Brown was an all-pro wide receiver. I mean, that's how much they used him as a rookie, like he's only going to get better. So like, to me, I see there's a huge overlap between St. Brown and Laporta as far as like, we need to have someone move the chains. Both of these guys are capable of doing that. But who else on this team generates any kind of pass rush other than Aiden Hutchinson? Nobody.
Well, Houston did while he was not hurt. So
right.
That's a thing, right?
Those 8 games were magical. So like
they actually really were. They're like, wow, he had like 9 sacks in 8 games.
So, but this will be Hutchinson season 3, right?
Yep.
So, can he get to like 13 or 14 sacks and like 110 pressures? Like there's no way that there's anybody else on the team that can do half of that.
Is that as important now that we've got presumably a better secondary and a linebacking crew that should be improving with Campbell hopefully improving, Barnes improved quite a bit. Iffy I know he's not a linebacker, but like if he took a big step up, is the loss of Hutch in that scenario more devastating, knowing that the back end is actually just better and Reader and we got a better defensive line in general? Is that more devastating to us than losing one of our two pass catching threats?
Yes, it's way more devastating.
Really? See, I had St. Brown as my guy. That's why I thought that there's probably four guys. There's at least Hutch, St. Brown. Those were the two obvious ones, and I think Laporta could be a third one. But I don't think that would be. I don't think Laporta would be a worse loss than St. Brown. So to me, it really comes down to Hutch and St. Brown. But I was also thinking about what about Sewell? Like if Sewell goes down, like is that worse than one of these other guys? Because you've seen the numbers for Jared Goff when he is under pressure, right? Like, yikes, bad. So we need to. He was the fourth guy. I still think it comes down to St. Brown and Hutch, but he was the fourth guy on my list of, all right, maybe, he should be a consideration at least. But
so I am very confident that the production brought to the team cannot be replaced. The biggest disparity between the player that can make the most happen and the next guy up is the greatest among edge rushers as opposed to this to anything else. So Penei Sewell would be an enormous loss. Enormous loss. I don't really know how you feel the thing. However, what I do know is there's no other unit in football that plays together like an offensive line. So
right.
At least when you lose Sewell, there is some amount of continuity amongst the other four starters that you can lean on. I don't think there's anybody on the Lions roster that can do half of what Aiden Hutchinson can currently do if he were to miss 10 games or whatever. So I just don't think that there is. I mean, like, I think that outside of Jared Goff, if a single player goes down, the production that you lose is the greatest amongst edge rushers than any other position because it can't be replaced.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a bigger drop off there. The reason I would go St. Brown is because we are going to win our games with offense, and he is an absurdly high percentage of the capabilities of our offense. Sure, you could force feed Sam Laporta. He's a second-year guy. He's going to be he's honestly one of my biggest question marks of going into this season. We kind of talked about that before the show. Like, I forget what question you asked, but it was what was the biggest question mark or something. What's the biggest unknown? He's my biggest thing. Like, all right, is there going to be a sophomore slump? Because if he doesn't do what he did last year, do we win 14 games? Probably not. So he needs to be at the same level or better this year to stay or to improve. And if he takes any little bit of a step back, then I'm not sure St. Brown isn't the most important non-quarterback on our team when it comes to do we win, do we lose?
So I don't know why. The question is, like, will Sam Laporta have a sophomore slump? To me, is the same question. Like, do you think that Amon-Ra St. Brown just won't be as good this year? I just don't see any reason for it at all. So,
no, but there's a reason why sophomore slump is a thing, right?
Sure.
Because it happens a lot. A lot of people come out strong, and then there's tape on them. They figure them out, and they haven't figured out how to get back to where they were. Now, St. Brown's done it 3 years in a row. Were there questions about St. Brown going into a sophomore slump? Absolutely.
Well, he did. He's done it for 2.5 years in a row. He didn't. He was not out of the gates as a rookie.
Well, it's because we didn't play him.
Catcher. Right, that's correct.
Actually, he was a 100-ball catcher as a rookie. Yeah, it was absurd. They all came in the last 10 games, but he was like 106, 109 or something like that.
Gotcha.
And he didn't even really start the first 6 games until I forget somebody went down and they give him a bit of a chance, and he just came out of nowhere like around game 6. But yes, he did not play really the first third or so of his rookie season, at least not meaningful snaps. But I see our offense dropping from a top 5 offense to maybe top 10.
He had 90 catches in his first year. So
90? Okay.
Sorry for the small distinction, but right.
Yeah. I was thinking he was just over. He was just under. But that's not bad considering he didn't really play the first 6 games, right?
True. So here's the thing. Like if Laporta goes down, in theory, you have at least 2 other pass catchers on the field virtually every offensive snap that you can go to. Like,
and there's a big drop to Brock Wright, but I mean, you just change your offensive philosophy. He's going to be more blocker and more of a surprise catcher.
Right. I still, it's not like there's 2 other pass rushers other than Aiden Hutchinson out there to make up the difference. And like, if Aiden Hutchinson's out there, is anybody on the defensive line scare you?
Do they have to scare you if you're
the point is that like better? I think when Aiden Hutchinson lines up in front of you, like the double team statistics that I've seen is basically like opposing offensive coordinators are dedicating 1.5 to 2 players to Aiden Hutchinson, and like there's no one else on the defensive line that you would say, no, we probably need another guy over there on Ali McNeil or Marcus Davenport or Josh Paschal or DJ Reader or whomever it is. So if there is no safety net for edge rusher the way that there is, in my opinion, for the continuity that the offensive line presents, or the just a number of other pass catchers that are going to be on the field at any given time for a wide receiver. So I'm not worried about a sophomore slump for Sam Laporta.
I'm not super worried about that. I am worried about St. Brown going down, though, because we win our games with offense, and our defense just tries to not lose them, right? We need to be good enough to not lose the games. That was not the way it was through most of Stafford's career. The defense just lost games all the time, and we had a great offense. Now we've got a great offense, and our defense is going to be like, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to be the team that loses these games. We're not going to win through our defense. We're not going to be like the Steel Curtain or like the Legion of Boom, any of those kind of like defense first championship type teams, Tampa Bay's defense in the early 2000s. But we're going to be good enough so when our offense goes out there and does its thing, we're going to win. And if our offense can't go out and do its thing, I don't think our defense can do enough to overcome that. And that's the only reason I would put there. Yeah.
Yeah. And if Aiden Hutchinson isn't out there, there's no chance that defense can do it.
Yeah. And it's tough. Yeah. So like which way is worse, right? Like a defense that can't do it when a defense that's going to blow the game even when the offense is well, or an offense that can't win the game even if the defense is going well. So I think TLDR is we need both of those guys healthy the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, like not being hurt is just great. And like the Lions they've just not had very many injuries over the last 2 seasons, like to these quote unquote pillar like players. And most of the reason is because they're young and either bounce back or don't get hurt yet. And stuff, but like those are probably coming to somebody at some point. You just can't dodge that bug forever, right?
Yeah. So. All right, I think we're gonna close it up unless you had something else.
I have nothing.
You have nothing. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody that popped into chat. Anybody that's watching or listening to this after the fact on the YouTube channel, thank you. We'll be here every Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Except
like, comment, sub. Yeah, I'm not going to be the next couple weeks. My wife and I are going on a European anniversary trip. So
so get ready for some 2025 mock drafts.
Oh, it'll be fun. I might even tune in. I probably just like an earpiece as long as my wife doesn't catch me. Although I'm also going to be 6 hours behind you or in front of you.
Yeah, so it'll be.
I won't be actually
1 or 2 in the morning when you're listening.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Never
sure.
mind. I'm not gonna be. I'm not gonna be. In my thoughts, though, Drew. All right, guys. We'll see y'all. Appreciate you. We'll catch you later. Peace.
Bye, guys.